A suicide car bombing strikes a European Union armored convoy in Somalia. We'll have the latest. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump travels to Africa on her first major solo international trip. And Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo sits down with VOA's Peter Clody to discuss China's investment in Africa and his vision for Ghana. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, world leaders are wrapping up the United Nations General Assembly on Monday. On Saturday, South Sudan's first Vice President, Taban Dengai's speech to the world body outlined the accomplishments by his country's President Salva Kiir, detailing the path the government is taking regarding the long-awaited implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. And on Saturday, neighboring Sudan's Foreign Minister Al-Dirdiri Mohamed Ahmed told VOA that Khartoum has started a peace process in South Sudan, which he says was subject to continuous conversation between the two neighbors and the United States. Now, for more on the UNGA, VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir joins me live from New York. Margaret, the world leaders have spoken extensively this week and the past week. We also heard from Africa's youngest nation on Saturday.
Yes, Esther, we're wrapping up the annual debate today. Just a few more speeches left. We heard, as you mentioned, from South Sudan's first vice president on Saturday. He said the country is moving towards a stable peace. And he pointed to the permanent ceasefire that's been agreed. He pointed to the revitalized peace agreement, and he said, and the national dialogue. And he said all of these things complement one another and are putting the country on the right path. Now, he acknowledged that there's regional and international skepticism because since South Sudan fell into internal conflict in 2013, we've sort of been here before. And, you know, no sooner has the ink been dry on some of these agreements that the fighting has resumed. So he acknowledged that, and he said that there's been a change in leaders' attitudes in South Sudan and that they're moving away from entrenched positions towards reconciliation and a unity government. So he, hopefully things will move in the right direction. And we heard today from the foreign minister of Sudan, Al-Dirdiri Ahmed. And he also spoke about relations with South Sudan, and he said that Sudan did not willingly let South Sudan go. I think perhaps a bit of an understatement. But he said that they're committed to making sure that since they've been through all of this, that it will be a stable, peaceful country. And he called for an expansion of the Regional Protection Force in South Sudan from 4,000 to 8,000 troops to maintain the ceasefire.
Very interesting, Margaret. You know, the world is watching to see if that peace agreement will hold. But overall, Margaret, you've followed the whole UN General Assembly discussions. What would you say were the key aspects?
Well, I think the big headlines this week were notably about North Korea, about the progress of the denuclearization talks between North Korea and the United States, and with intra-Korean relations between North and South Korea. That was one of the major headlines here. And also on Iran, we heard from President Trump kind of more of the same, but it was an overarching theme of his visit here that he believes the government in Iran is corrupt and a sponsor of terror, and he is very pleased he withdrew from the nuclear deal. So we heard a lot about that again. But I think one of the most important things we heard from him was a repudiation of the International Criminal Court, and that could have ramifications in Africa. This major lack of support from the United States for the court. The U.S. was not a signatory to it, but it had never taken such a hardline position against the court as Mr. Trump did on Tuesday.
Margaret, we're running out of time, but we'll catch up again soon as the world leaders wrap up this UNGA 2018. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther.
Margaret Bashir, a VOA correspondent at the UN, reporting live for us in New York. Now, 3 people were killed in a suicide car bombing by Islamist group Al-Shabaab, which hit a European Union armored convoy in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, on Monday. According to police and emergency service workers, the blast struck the convoy around 12 noon local time in the heart of the city. An ambulance services employee told reporters they carried 2 dead Somalis and 4 others who were injured. Police say the bomber also died in the blast. The armored vehicles had Italian and European Union flags on them. The Al-Shabaab terrorist group, which frequently carries out attacks in Somalia, has claimed responsibility. The European Union is one of the major sources of funding for the African Union-mandated peacekeeping force, AMISOM, which helps defend Somalia's central government against the extremists. Now, judges at the International Criminal Court at The Hague on Monday heard a plea from former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo to have his case for alleged crimes against humanity dismissed early due to lack of evidence. Gbagbo's lawyers argued in a written submission that he doesn't need to present a defense as prosecutors have failed to provide enough evidence as they put forth their case against him to support a conviction. But prosecutors say Gbagbo, who is accused of 4 counts of crimes against humanity and is being held in the court's detention center, does have a case to answer. The former Ivorian president is on trial for murder, rape, persecution, and other inhumane acts of allegedly committed after 2010 elections, when Gbagbo and his supporters refused to accept his electoral defeat by rival Alassane Ouattara. James Stewart is the court's deputy prosecutor.
Mr. President, I can say by way of opening that the trial of the accused Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blé Goudet should, in our submission, go through to a determination on the merits. With respect to the no case to answer motions filed by the accused, the prosecution has met the test that the trial chamber should apply at this midway stage of the trial proceedings. There is in our submission evidence that has been submitted and discussed before the chamber upon which a trial chamber could reasonably convict the accused of the charges against them. Mr. President, Your Honours, note that the test is not whether any trial chamber would convict. That puts the test too high at this stage. The question is whether any trial chamber could convict.
The hearings on a possible early acquittal are expected to run through Friday, with Gbagbo's side yet to present oral arguments. No date has been set for a ruling. Scientists have managed to wipe out a population of mosquitoes in a lab using a type of genetic engineering known as a gene drive. The intervention prevented the females from reproducing and caused the entire population to die off. Scientists hope the method can be transferred from the lab to the real world to tackle mosquito populations that spread diseases like malaria. Henry Ridgwell has our report from London.
Mosquitoes spread malaria that kills an estimated 429,000 people every year, many of them children. So this new method of killing mosquito populations has sparked huge interest. Scientists from Imperial College London managed to eliminate a population of breeding mosquitoes in a laboratory using a gene drive. Professor Andrea Crisanti co-led the research.
The gene drive is a technical solution that allows a genetic modification to be spread from few individuals to an entire population.
That modification involved disrupting a gene that determines sexual differentiation.
So in this way, a genetic female, if you destroy this gene, cannot develop into a female, but develop in something between a male and a female that we call intersex. These individuals cannot bite, which is very good, cannot lay egg, and so cannot reproduce itself.
That inability to reproduce spread across the mosquitoes, and the entire population died off within 11 generations. The big question is whether that success can be replicated outside the laboratory.
We have already done, we have moved this mosquito in large confined space which mimic completely the tropical environment. Then after this is completed, this phase will also be crucial to gather a lot of information for regulatory purpose, for example, about safety, stability, ability of the gene drive to move across species.
Scientists say reassuring the public about the safety of this powerful technique is paramount. It's hoped the gene drive can be tested in the wild within 5 to 10 years. New tools in the fight against malaria are urgently needed, as the World Health Organization says global progress against the disease is stalling. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
The First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, is traveling to Africa Monday. It's her first major solo international trip since her husband became president. The White House says Mrs. Trump will stop in Ghana, Malawi, Kenya, and Egypt during her 5-day visit. She will focus on maternal and newborn care in hospitals, education for children, the deep culture and history woven into each African country, and how the United States is supporting each country on its journey to self-reliance. Child welfare has been the focus of Mrs. Trump's Be Best campaign launched earlier this year. Jad Devamont, the Africa Program Director at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says Melania has some heavy lifting to do on this trip, but she is following in the footsteps of other U.S. First Ladies who visited the African continent. Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, and Michelle Obama traveled to the continent multiple times. Now to the firestorm surrounding U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. The FBI this week conducted a limited investigation of some accusations of sexual misconduct leveled against Kavanaugh. As VOA's Michael Bowman reports, last week's testimony by the nominee and one of his accusers did not alter a bitter partisan split in the Senate, but it did delay a scheduled final vote on Kavanaugh.
My name is Christine Blasey Ford.
After testimony that riveted a nation,
I was pushed onto the bed and Brett got on top of me.
But I have never done this to her or to anyone.
The Judiciary Committee advanced Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the full Senate on the condition the FBI be given a week to probe Kavanaugh's alleged sexual misdeeds from decades past.
And now I don't know if any votes will change next week, but at least people can say, hey, we had a better process. And we need that to try to unify the country.
Democrats had long demanded a supplemental FBI investigation.
Let's slow down. Let's learn more. Let's not put a man on the Supreme Court with these allegations swirling around him.
President Donald Trump first signaled patience amid the delay, then went on the attack against Democrats.
And they're determined to take back power by using any means necessary. You see the meanness, the nastiness. They don't care who they hurt.
Kavanaugh also accused Democrats of seeking to destroy him and responded testily to questions about his youth.
So you're saying there's never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before or part of what happened?
You're asking about, blackout. I don't know. Have you?
Could you answer the question, Judge?
The evasiveness led Democrats to question more than Kavanaugh's treatment of women.
This was not someone who reflected an impartial temperament or the fairness and even-handedness one would see in a judge. This was someone who was aggressive and belligerent.
Not so, say key Republicans.
The temperament I saw was a man who was innocent, who was rightly offended by being destroyed for a political purpose. He's going to be a great judge, and he's going to be on the Supreme Court.
Acting at the behest of the White House, the FBI has 1 week to probe specific questions about Kavanaugh. Some Democrats say the scope and time frame are too limited. Republicans want a final confirmation vote as soon as the FBI's work is done. Meanwhile, Americans of all political stripes are watching and weighing in 1 month before U.S. midterm elections. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, Ghana's president discusses the economy and Melania Trump's upcoming visit. But first, a look at Monday's headlines.
In Ivory Coast, former President Laurent Gbagbo submitted a plea to the International Criminal Court on 4 counts of crimes against humanity. Gbagbo's lawyer argued the ICC doesn't have enough evidence to prosecute. In Cameroon, President Paul Biya says he plans to restore peace in the English-speaking regions nearly a year after radical Anglophone leaders established a self-declared Republic of Ambazonia. The UN envoy for Libya says elections may be delayed past December due to recent waves of violent unrest in the country. Britain's Prince William meets with President Uhuru Kenyatta to discuss wildlife conservation and play football with local children. Finally, in Ethiopia, the Irisha Festival draws large crowds in remembrance of more than 700 people who were killed and in celebration of the country's impending reforms.
U.S. First Lady Melania Trump arrives in Ghana Tuesday to kick off a 4-nation trip to Africa. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo says it is a sign of the importance President Donald Trump places on U.S. ties with Ghana. VOA's Peter Clotty spoke with President Akufo-Addo about the First Lady's visit and Ghana's relationship with foreign investors.
It's good. This is the wife of the President of the United States, a country with whom we have very good relations. And we're taking it that the President sending his wife to come and visit us is also trying to make a statement about the relations between America and then Ghana. So we welcome it very much. My wife is excited about the possibility of her hosting the U.S. First Lady, and so we make sure that I think the 2 days she's spending in Ghana, I believe, are eventful and memorable for her and for us also in Ghana.
One of the most critical promises you made to Ghanaians is Ghana Beyond Aid. What is the time period to actualizing or realizing this vision, and do you think it is possible before you seek re-election?
There is, first of all, if you like, the mobilizing theme. Ghana recognizing that we have to do things for ourselves. We can't continue 61 years after independence to be dependent on foreign assistance. So if you are looking for indices, the indices are the steps we would take to reduce that dependence. When we're talking Ghana Beyond Aid, it's important that the world does not misunderstand us. We're not saying that we do not need partnerships. We're not saying that we don't need cooperation with others. On the contrary, what we're saying is that we prefer that we have relations with countries, say, like America, which are based on trade and investment, cooperation, rather than us sitting down and say what USAID can do for us, what X other American agency can do for us, but that we have a relationship where our business people, American business people, are cooperating to develop businesses in Ghana and grow the Ghanaian economy. We're able to give jobs to our people. So that's the overall framework. But above all, it is a call on Ghanaians to lift up their heads to say, look at this country that we have. It has so much resources in the soil, in the ground, in our oceans. How best can we harness all these resources so that we can develop our country quickly?
Some people have expressed concern that the recent contractual loans or barter system that your administration has entered into with China undercuts your vision of Ghana Beyond Aid. What do you say to some of your critics who say that?
I can't understand that with respect. I don't understand the thinking. What is this? What is being suggested that we are some little island all are by ourselves? We're cut off from international cooperation and exist, and then we don't have relations with other people. No, I think that on the contrary, the arrangement that we have had with the Chinese is one of the more creative and innovative things that our government has done in many, many years. Because what do you say? You are having access to a lot of money for you to attack one of your most important areas of deficit, your infrastructure, your roads, your railways, and that at the same time, the monies that you're getting are not appearing on your balance sheet because you're paying for it, not with cash, but with product. And we've made it very clear that in the arrangement that we're having with the Chinese, the bauxite that we're going to send to them is not raw bauxite or even alumina. It's aluminium products. Okay. That's a major advance. We're not, as always, then going to be handing over our raw materials for somebody else to treat and add value and then send back to us. On the contrary, we'll be sending finished products to China to pay for, as it were, to pay for the facility that we're getting. I think it's a very creative idea. I would have expected people to recognize that this is quite a novel and intelligent way of doing things. And by that process, we're not burdening our debt profile, we're not adding to our debt stock, because it's a barter arrangement.
Be sure to join us tomorrow when we bring you part 2 of Peter Claudi's interview with Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo. The Catholic Church is closing parishes across the American Midwest and Northeast in response to years of declining attendance. The demographics and overall trend of secularism is partly to blame, but repeated cases of sexual abuse in the church have not helped the situation. VOA's Teresa Krug reports from the Midwestern state of Iowa, where some church members are questioning why they should stay.
After more than a century serving the Catholic community of Mallard in northwest Iowa, St. Mary's Church, once the focal point for generations of Catholics in this small Midwest town, closed its doors over the summer for the last time.
We didn't realize, I don't think, how much of a thing that it played in people's lives until it was closed, because now all of a sudden you run into people and it's like, I haven't seen you for months.
St. Mary's is among dozens of Catholic churches across the United States that have closed or consolidated, forcing many Catholic faithful, like Bernie Kenyon, to seek new places of worship.
We are still kind of wandering. A lot of our parish members are wandering, still looking for the parish, you know, to make it home, because this has been our parish forever.
But as small farms give way to larger farms, many young workers have left, leaving church pews empty. Father Brent Lingle, who is overseeing some of the church closings, says there are many reasons for the church's declining numbers.
As a society as a whole, over these last several decades, we've become much more secular. And so the role of faith and the role of church isn't perhaps as important in the lives of families as it once was.
But others say the church is changing positions on abortion, divorce, gay marriage, and more recently, the mounting cases of sexual abuse have left many Catholics confused.
I don't think the sense of the people that I'm talking to and dealing with in ministry every day they're not ready to walk away from the church. But for the first time, I think in a long time, they're angry and they're waiting for a response.
Explosive new revelations about clerical abuse in Pennsylvania have left many Catholics questioning their faith. Some have switched to other denominations. Others have stopped practicing altogether. Like many churchgoers, Bernie Kenyon says she just wants answers.
In our church, in our family, in our circle, we are not backing down.
It may be too soon to know the full impact of the latest scandals on church attendance. But for the first time, some Catholics are fighting back against centuries-old traditions. Many think it's time for the faithful to take a more active role. Only then might the declining numbers change course. Teresa Krug for VOA News, Ames, Iowa.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. A Kenyan entrepreneur wants to change her country's art scene. Each month, Gloria Adero Barasa displays a new exhibit in Nairobi to showcase the works of local artists. Her mission is clear: to get more Kenyans interacting with homegrown talent. Entry to the Better Art exhibition is free and open to anyone, including children. The startup advertises its events through social media. Meanwhile, the Go Down Arts Center in Nairobi's industrial hub is about to undergo an elaborate and transformative renovation process. It is a collection of warehouses converted into 10,000 square meters of art studios. The new state-of-the-art center is expected to be completed in 2021. Next up, it is difficult to define South Africa's GQOM music, but it can be recognized by house beats mixed with a medley of instruments, and more so, how it has taken over the country's dance scene. GQOM was first created in Durban's neighborhoods and is a sound that resonates with the social conditions of township life. It's popular across all ages and across continents, resonating with even more listeners after one of the genre's ambassadors, the Distraction Boys, had their hit Omunye featured on the soundtrack for the award-winning film Black Panther. And finally, another weekend of controversy for rap superstar Kanye West. West is apparently changing his name to Ye. He announced the new name via Twitter on Saturday, and he wrote, "The being formerly known as Kanye West has been changed. I am Ye." The Grammy winner sent the tweet ahead of his appearance on the popular American comedy show Saturday Night Live, where he closed the show by delivering an impromptu monologue at the end of the show mentioning President Donald Trump while wearing a hat that says, "Make America Great Again," to a chorus of boos, and that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This expression sounds like a violent way of eating, but it's actually not always about eating.
Here is your Russian book, Anna. Thanks for letting me borrow it.
Oh, are you done with level 1 already?
Yeah, I finished last week, and I've already finished level 2.
Wow, you are really sinking your teeth into learning Russian.
Well,